Welcome to Pharmacist Diaries, Sureena.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, no, I came across your profile on LinkedIn and I was like, this woman is right up my street. I have to contact her. We have all the same passions. Like, this is going to be a good conversation. So, I really appreciate you kind of going out your comfort zone and doing something different in a way, getting, interviewed or having a conversation with someone that you don't know, which is always very exciting for me because now I've interviewed well over 50 pharmacists, a lot of which I don't know. So, it's nice to kind of increase my network. But, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it's so exciting talking to you as well.
Cool. So we usually kickstart the episodes by asking you why you decided to become a pharmacist in the first place.
So I guess for me, I think for any sort of teenager, 15, 16-year-old, trying to figure out what it is that you want to do is just, crazy. How at that age do you expect to know what you want to do? And so for me, I think it was, I liked science and I liked talking. So what profession can I find that accommodates the both of them? And I think for me, I wanted a degree which I could then get a job out of quite easily, I guess. And so pharmacy kind of just seemed like a good fit. But it was only when I kind of did work experience for a couple of weeks did I realize, okay, yeah, pharmacy is really for me. So I worked in a community pharmacy, and there are so many misconceptions, as we're all aware of, with community pharmacy. And being at that age, admittedly, I had all those misconceptions as well. And it was only sort of being on the other side of it, seeing what the pharmacist does, seeing how the pharmacy teams work, sort of the challenges that they have to overcome, and that pharmacist just being a pillar in that community and just being a fountain of knowledge to people. I really admired that. And so for me, it was like, okay, I think, yeah, this is what I want to do. I can see myself doing this, I think. And yeah, just went from there, really.
Yeah, there's a lot of chat in community pharmacy. It's
Yeah.
good. If you like talking, it's a good place to be because, once you get to know your customers, there's, the regular banter, the
Yeah.
regular conversation about how you are, the family members, and you feel, like you said, you're the pillar of the community and you really feel like you're at the heart of the community in community
Very
pharmacy,
much.
which as a student, I worked in community pharmacy, and that pharmacy that I worked at was really, really good. And those misconceptions are sometimes due to the specific pharmacy you might have worked at and might not have suited you. And it's always good to kind of try, whether it's starting off with a big chain or kind of retail pharmacy and then trying out an independent. Because for me, I think independent pharmacies suit me so much more than working for the bigger chains. Um, they are very much business oriented in the same way. They're money making machines, aren't they? Though they are patient centered. But at the same time, I feel when I worked in it was quite a small town, like a small village, you got to know the patients really, really well. And that was the aspect of the role that I enjoyed. And this is, back in 2005 when I had just started my undergraduate degree. So that really gave me that exposure to all of the over the counter medications and providing, minor ailment advice, which I thought, yeah, this is good. This is a great career to be in.
No, I agree. And I think for me, so my background is community pharmacy. And so I've locumed, been a relief pharmacist, tried to sort of see or be in sort of every community pharmacy type that you can think of. So like you said, your high street, your small independents, your bigger chains, those affiliated with sort of drug and alcohol misuse clinics, care homes, etc. So you kind of find what setting works for you. And I think that's another thing with community pharmacy is that we say community pharmacy like it's just one thing, but actually there's so many different types of community pharmacies out there. And especially for newly qualified pharmacists, those who are early in their career, they might actually find that, yeah, one particular type of community pharmacy doesn't work as well for them as, say, another type does. So it's kind of exploring what, as you said, what works for you and where you see yourself fitting into as well.
Yeah, and I definitely think even from university stage, it's a really good idea to get that work experience and start identifying what you're good at, what your skills are, what type of role you think you can see yourself in. You may work with patients and be like, no, this is not for me. Like, you might want to become an IT savvy pharmacist, or, go into leadership and work in the operational side of pharmacy. So it's a really good idea to kind of get that experience from the beginning stages. And I know a lot of the students that I work with at KCL have summer placements and kind of weekend jobs and things, and they use that to their advantage in terms of learning who they are and what they want to become. Did you know in the university stages that you wanted to work in community pharmacy, or did you explore other options as well?
I think quite early on I knew that community was for me. I think I'm just generally one of those people that hospital settings make me a little bit queasy, which as a
Okay.
healthcare professional, I probably, it's just one of those things. I've always sort of felt a little bit, with just being in hospital in general. And of course, working in a hospital is very different to, visiting a sick relative in hospital, for example. But I think because I had almost that association with a hospital setting, it was always quite hard to kind of shake off. Um, at least that's what it was at the time. Now I'm fine, but at the time that was kind of my perception. And even at university, they had organised for us to get placements within hospital, and it just wasn't for me at that time. And I think very much the patient facing aspect of it was something which really appealed to me for community pharmacy, being able to build that relationship and rapport with patients, um, you know, going on that kind of journey with them. So yeah, I'd say from early on, I kind of realized that community pharmacy is probably where I fitted into. Um, and I guess in many ways, I didn't really know much else about hospital pharmacy aside from that placement that I did. I didn't really, because I hadn't had like a full extensive placement there. It was just 1 week, so I didn't really know exactly what roles and responsibilities entailed fully to be a hospital pharmacist. So yeah, I'd say for me, community was kind of where my heart was, and then where I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to follow it really.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, my parents owned a pharmacy for 20 plus years, so I grew up in one. Though
Yeah.
they're not pharmacists, they owned a pharmacy, so I knew obviously what it was all about. And then going to a community pharmacy throughout my university years, and working weekends, all holidays, I knew I really enjoyed it, and I could see myself working there. But I was really tempted by looking at the other jobs that were available to me. And, I worked really hard to try and get that hospital pre-reg because I wanted to really see how I would fit into that environment. And I went in there, and it was like love at first sight. Like, I genuinely really enjoyed every aspect. And the main thing that I loved was
Mm.
the variety of just the workload, the people, the big team, working with nurses, working with, doctors, physios, OTs. Like, I really enjoyed that environment of just meeting and networking with other healthcare professionals. Now, you do that in a community pharmacy, but it's just different because usually it's over the phone or some sort of virtual conversation. So whether you build that rapport, or that rapport that you do build, is slightly different, because you may only have that interaction a couple of times a day for a few minutes. And it's usually, I need to get a job done. I need help with this prescription. Can you send us a new one? All those kind of like interventions that you make. Do you make good relationships with GPs? Actually, I should ask you because you're a community pharmacist. Um,
Um,
do you
yeah,
feel that you can build some really good friendships with those doctors?
yeah. So, especially if I think of even sort of my own pre-reg year, now known as foundation training year, yeah, with all the GP surgeries around the pharmacy, you got to know them really well. You got to know the
Okay.
doctors really well. You got to know the admin staff really well as well. And it was nice, especially if you're working very closely and within close proximity to a GP surgery. So with us, we had a GP surgery literally opposite across the road. So
Okay.
which was really handy, because if you couldn't get through to them, I'd just walk across to them and just say, hey, can you sort out X, Y, Z? And it really helps all with that connection and that way of working. And I think that's another thing with community pharmacy, is that you do get that aspect of working within a multidisciplinary team, albeit very different to a hospital environment, of course. And I think it's amazing that when trainees and students, they do get that opportunity within their undergraduate year to do a placement, because otherwise, I guess in hindsight for me, it was kind of tunnel vision that, okay, community pharmacy is what I'm going to go into. Whereas if you have, students now who have more opportunities and availabilities to take placements in different sectors and different environments, at least it then broadens and opens up their eyes to the different pharmacies that are available to them and the different job roles that are available to them as well, and then see, I guess, what fits best for them.
Yeah, true, definitely. I love the face-to-face interaction. And
Same.
I can't say I've missed it, because I've been involved in it this entire time, even in the pandemic and everything else going virtual, like I've been going to work. So, but I've missed hugging people.
Yeah, and especially
Everyone,
Christmas time, when everyone gives you like biscuits and chocolates and all sorts, and then a hug as well. It's like, oh,
yeah.
yay.
Yeah, no, I'm a daily hugger. Everyone I work with knows, before the pandemic hit, everyone would receive a daily hug from me. So it is like, it's really hard to kind of just not go in for the kill. I do really miss that, but things have changed. But face-to-face interaction is amazing, and
Yeah.
I do love it so, so much. Even with my students, like at the university, having to go online and do virtual kind of lectures, it was just not the same. Like, I missed it so much, and now it's become pretty much the norm.
Mm.
And we're seeing the benefits of utilizing online platforms for learning, instead of doing all learning face to face and going to this kind of hybrid effect. But I really do miss doing everything face to face. And you develop those relationships with students so much more. They're not always as open to chatting in front of 100 plus other students on Zoom or Teams, versus face to face. They tend to be more approachable. You can walk up to them in a lecture and actually physically ask them a question and pick on somebody in a nice way. And
Yeah.
just engage with them and encourage them to get involved with whatever we're learning about. So I do miss that, and I look forward to kind of getting back to face-to-face. We're actually organising OSCEs to be face-to-face this year, which I can't wait for. Yeah, it's going to feel like more kind of normal university life again, instead of having to make them do it via a computer and typing out an answer that they would give a patient. So yeah, their consultation skills will definitely improve, which will be good for them.
No, I fully appreciate that, because in my previous role, so previously I was working at the National Pharmacy Association as a lead learning and development pharmacist, and part of my role was pre-reg course lead. So I would organise the study days for the students, and it was the same with us. You saw that difference from when you were able to have that face-to-face learning to that virtual learning. And don't get me wrong, I think virtual learning is such a fantastic tool that we've been able to utilise, and it's really opened up so many different opportunities, especially for trainees who maybe live really far away, and it was a struggle for them to get to face-to-face study days. I think it's been really accessible in that stance. But that interaction level that you get in a face-to-face setting is completely different, because you get that engagement, you build that relationship with the trainees, they get to know you, you get to know them. It's even those, like, I never really used to like small talk beforehand, before the pandemic, and it was only like once the pandemic struck that I missed small talk. I missed, just having those little chats with people that kind of made up your day, and you didn't realize how much of an impact that has on your day, just finding out what's happening in people's lives. And it's definitely something that I really appreciate now. And in those study days, it would be those little chats that you'd have with your students, where then you really got to know about them, about their lives, what's going on. And in a virtual setting, you can't really do that. You don't get that same engagement and relationship as such. So
Yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, I like the idea of lectures online just to make it easy, especially we've got students who are living internationally at the moment. So it makes it really accessible for them to complete this course. What I'm looking forward to is when consultation workshops go back to face, because it's not just about the language that you use in terms of the verbal language, but all of the body language that you need to teach your students in terms of, something as simple as you're crossing your arms while you're talking to a patient. How do you think that will make them feel? And the way you just, your demeanor, you can't get that virtually, or you can try, but it's not the same. So the students seeing that and visualizing and having our actors who we've missed so much, uh, play, angry patients or upset patients, it's so different when you do it in front of somebody, rather than what feels like a very fake environment when you have to do it virtually. So,
it gives
there's
students the opportunity to learn from each other as well, which I
exactly,
think is so important, because sometimes actually you can learn from other people's mistakes. So if you're seeing
yeah.
someone do something and you think, oh, okay, that's not the way that I want to do it when it's my turn now, or whatever, practical observation that may be, I think there is really something in that which helps with your own learning and your own understanding. And like you said,
Mm.
virtually, you're not going to get that really. So having that face to face aspect is so important for any sort of development and learning.
Yeah, definitely. Any relationship that you build,
Mm.
it's really good when it's
Mm.
face to face. Well, actually, I lie. I fell in love through email. I got My husband and I met. Um, he was living in Dubai and I was living here, but we met when he was on holiday in the UK. So we've got lots of mutual friends, and we went out for dinner. And of course, we were the two single people who got put next to each other at the dinner table. So, we're chit chatting away. I was going to climb Kilimanjaro the following month. So we were
Wow.
talking about exercising and kind of, uh, training regimes and things like that. And I asked him to come out for a run with me. And we just kind of enjoy conversation, had a good time. And during those kind of last week or so of his holiday, we were meeting up. He was driving down from London to Oxford to come and visit me because I was a resident back then, taking me out to dinners. We went wine tasting. We were romancing
Oh,
basically. But then he left. And the last dinner we had, we were just like, well, what is this? What are we going to do? And back then, I mean, it's over a decade ago. FaceTime didn't exist, I don't think. Maybe it did, but we used Skype. But most of the time, people were using Skype calls and not necessarily the video that much. So we used to do phone calls, but we lived off emails. We built our entire relationship and marriage off emails and
oh.
WhatsApp, because we used to communicate so much via typing.
Do you still have
So
those emails?
I do.
Oh, that's really cute.
And we created we're going so off topic. We created a email address for my daughter as well, and we send her emails. So yeah,
Oh,
when she's older, she'll receive lots of emails, pictures, random love letters of how
that's
much we
such a
love her.
great idea. It's like a time capsule.
Yeah, it's a good
But
idea because everything's virtual now, which is amazing. So yeah, even though face to face is really good and you can build relationships, my point is the virtual world is just as good. Yeah. So tell me more about kind of starting your job at the MPA. How did you find that job when you were working in community? How did you come across it?
to be honest, it was just a Google search. I think
Really? Okay.
it was just trying to look for what other opportunities were out there. I'd been in community pharmacy for a while, and I just wanted to see what else was there.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing this job advert for NPA. At the time, was known as an education and training role, and it sounded everything that I wanted to do. Sort of like leading with the pre-reg course, creating content, supporting other courses. So I was like, yeah, let me just give this a go. It's that thing of, unless you try and unless you apply, you never know. And I think with anything that you do, you've always got that little voice of doubt in your mind that's saying, oh no, you can't get this, you won't get it, da, da, da. But I think it's so important to kind of squash that voice and just try and see what happens. And fortunately, interview went well, and then I got the job, and yeah, it was an amazing role, great team, really enjoyed the work that I did there, and the relationships that I built there as well. A lot of my colleagues are now close friends, and it was just, yeah, it was also nice being able to support community pharmacy, but from a different aspect, from a different viewpoint. And again, it goes back to that thing of, people say community pharmacy, but then they don't realize that there are organizations like NPA, and others which help support pharmacies through the work that they do. And I guess it's sort of opening up sort of the opening up to people's eyes, really, that there are roles like this that are available and that you should just try and go for and see what happens.
And community pharmacists are completely eligible to apply for these
100%.
roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I guess when you applied for the role, and I completely advocate for going outside your comfort zone and actually trying applications, attempting interviews, because you can't really learn those skills without doing them physically, and learning from failure and getting that feedback as to why you might not have achieved that job in that moment, and what you can do to get better. That's the attitude that you need to have, and not worry about the fact that it is a fail. It's not a fail.
Yeah. I
It's
think
just a learning curve.
exactly. I think every failure is an opportunity to learn, and I'm I'm one of those people that kind of believe, well, if one door closes, it just means that a better door is waiting for you to open. And actually, you need to have that setback or failure, whatever it is that you want to call it. You need to have that to propel you for that next big milestone that you're going to get, that next opportunity that you're going to get. And
Mm.
without having the learnings from that experience, you wouldn't then be able to get onto that next step. And I think if you change your perception of things and you think of things in that way, firstly, it's a lot easier to digest, but then it also does make you realize that actually, I mean, I've applied for jobs that I haven't got before, and I'm really glad that I didn't get them, because it wouldn't have taken me on the path that I'm on now. And so I think, yeah, it is that thing of taking yourself out of your comfort zone, applying for it, seeing what happens, and then seeing what lessons you can learn from that.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes you actually get to the interview and you meet your potential employer and you think, actually, this isn't for me. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that I applied and I've taken this opportunity to learn and grow.
Mm.
But moving on, I know this is not where I need to be, and I need to find something else that works for me and that I'm suited for, that I'm going to be passionate about, that I'm going to grow in. So kind of taking the time to change your mindset and think more positively and not worry too much about how it looks if you didn't get the job, or how it makes you feel that you've been rejected. Use it as an opportunity to find something else.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
What kind of skills do you think that you had from community pharmacy that kind of transferred into that role that helped you to get that job, do you think?
So I guess that's a good question. So I guess
Sorry, I'm putting you on the
no,
spot. I'm getting excited.
well, if I think of it as, so I've when I was at NP, I kind of I progressed within that role. So if I think of it in terms of when I was looking for candidates who we were then filling positions in,
Okay.
for say my previous role, if I think of it from that stance, I guess one thing that really that you have within community pharmacy, that in hospital pharmacy as well, to be fair, but as a pharmacist, a key role is that team working skills, being able to the adapt your style, your ways of working, depending on who the team are around you. If you have that one particular individual who's maybe a bit challenging to work with, and then sort of changing your stance and your style with them, to try and motivate them and get them on board within your team. Uh, I think that team working skills is so important within any role that you are doing. So that was a big one. I'd say being proactive as well within a community pharmacy. You need to be proactive. You need to always be one step ahead of the game, ensuring that, do we have enough supply of this particular medicine, making sure that you're on top of, prescriptions that you're dispensing, checking, etc., making sure that you're supporting the staff that you have around you. Being proactive, I think, is so important in any role that you do. And I think that was a real key one when I was at MPA as well, ensuring that you are, because by being proactive, you are in turn then helping to support the team. So I think that's something that's really key. I'm trying to think of other ones now.
I've got loads. They're just like flowing through my mind on behalf of you. Communication, of course, is
Yeah,
transferable in any job, whether that's with patients, with your employer, your managers, technicians, but at the MPA, obviously, you've got other employees, you've got, these trainee pharmacists, obviously, to support in terms of their education and training. And it's not just communication in terms of organizing their teaching and actually doing the teaching, but, the email coordination and organization that goes into that. Organization, of course,
yeah.
is a valuable tool to always have up your sleeve in any job. And the things that you have to organize in a community pharmacy, you have your routines, don't you? And once you got that instilled into your kind of day to day, it's the same when you transfer that into another job.
I think
I
another big,
also, yeah,
sorry,
go on.
I was going to say another big one, I think, is your general experience. So
Mm,
having the experiences that you've had within community pharmacy and then bringing that with you. So especially with those face-to-face study days, you need to be able to have experiences that you can talk about and then talk about the lessons learned from that. So
yeah,
our study days, as much as they were, to help you get through the calculation and clinical content, a very big part of it is how do you become a confident and competent day one pharmacist? If you think of sort of like the legal versus ethical issues that you may be faced with, you need to be able to share those experiences, personal experiences that you have, to then help benefit those students that you're then teaching. And like you said, yeah, communication being an absolute massive one, because it's not just students you're communicating with, it's stakeholders as well. It's the designated supervisors, it's the area managers, it's all the key leads within that community pharmacy, and also wider organizations as well. It's all of those key skills which, not necessarily just community pharmacy, hospital pharmacy, industry pharmacy, it's the traits that any sort of pharmacist, pharmacy technician has. And all of those attributes are what is required for a role which I was in, but also they're transferable skills. So it's really to any role that you go into.
yeah, completely. And I totally agree. And going from community pharmacy into an education and training role, at first, when you think about it, you're like, oh, I don't really have the experience. Like, I don't have any formal teaching experience. How am I supposed to apply for this job? Why would they hire me? But the more you kind of dive deep into the skills that you've gained from community pharmacy, you realize quite quickly that actually, you know what, I've been teaching technicians like the last, 3 years just because that's what I do. And, that's what it's just normal part of, your job and your day to day. And you just don't think of it as something that you've gained as a skill because it's your normal routine. You've obviously, most pharmacies do have a trainee pharmacist or a pre-reg around that you're constantly educating. You're educating patients all day. So
Exactly.
clearly you're involved with education and training from that perspective. And that skill in itself is transferable, regardless of the fact that you're now training, trainee pharmacists. The skill is still there. So when community pharmacists are thinking, I don't know where I can go from here, and I don't want to be a manager because actually the responsibility is just not my thing. And actually, sometimes for a lot of people, it's like the money's not necessarily really worth all the
Yeah.
stress that comes with that job. And for some people, they don't really want to deal with all the HR and staffing issues and organizing timetables and everything else that comes with that responsibility. Dealing with sickness, it's hard. Like, it's a tough job, and it's a completely different transition from being a responsible pharmacist to a manager. But this role is completely like logical. It's completely doable, and it is a perfect transition if you have passion for education and training, and you have interest in the future generation of pharmacists, which clearly you do.
Like,
So it worked out.
and it's not just for community pharmacists. I mean, if there are roles sort of at NPA, at Buttercups, at CPP, any of those kind of organisations, if you're a hospital pharmacist, by all means apply for roles like those. It's not just for community pharmacists, because actually, as we mentioned, all those communication skills, teamwork skills, etc., they're all transferable. And actually being able to have someone who maybe sees things in a different type of way, or knows about a different sector and the challenges that they're facing, and can bring those sort of knowledge and insights into their role, that's brilliant. That's going to benefit the whole team, and organisation as well. So I think with any of those type of roles, if you've got the right skill set, and I think if you've got the right attitude, they're the real main things. And then everything else, I guess, can be learned, really.
Yeah, and like you said as well, coming back to your point, that the actual experience you have with patients slides really well into a role where you start training pharmacists, because those examples of real life situations that you've been through, like most of the examples I give about pediatrics, about 90% of them are patients I've really seen, issues that I've really dealt with, problems that I've actually solved in my day-to-day job. I don't make them up as case studies. They are real live interactions that have just been transferred onto paper and made patient confidential. And maybe students don't realize that, is that the role of, a clinical pharmacist or a community pharmacist builds a really huge amount of skill that you can then transfer onto other jobs. So go you for going out your comfort zone.
Thank you.
Nice. No, I love that. It's a good story. And it's led on to a very exciting role after that. So tell us where you are now.
So now I'm an early careers training program director, which
Sounds really fancy.
it sounds very fancy. Even when I got it, I was like, oh, I need to remember what this title is. It took me a while. There's a lot of words in it. No, it's a really amazing role that I'm thoroughly enjoy being in, and we're a team of early careers pharmacists. So we're not necessarily early careers pharmacists, but we're supporting those who are early in their career. I should clarify. And so those encompass your trainee pharmacists, your newly qualified pharmacists, but even those who are early in their career in a new sector. So if you've had someone who's been in community pharmacy for say 5 years, but now they've gone to hospital pharmacy or vice versa, they're early in their career in that experience. And a big part of our role is looking at the new reforms, the new initial education and training standards, and how we can try and implement the changes that need to happen by 2026 in order for trainees, for once they're finished their foundation training year, to then go on and be prescribers. So I think it's a really exciting time in pharmacy education. And I know the whole prescriber thing has really divided opinions. I think it's the direction that is well overdue, and I'm very much for this direction that we're going into. I think trainee pharmacists can be so underestimated, and this is a perfect opportunity to showcase that actually, if in many ways, the way that I kind of think about it is, no one in theory should have a better knowledge than a newly qualified pharmacist. And I say that because they've had to pass 2 exams, so their knowledge level needs to be really up there. That's not to say that, a pharmacist who has years and years of experience, of course, you can't take that away from them. But in terms of, B&F knowledge level, a trainee pharmacist will, no one should really beat them. No one should really beat a newly qualified pharmacist. So I think having that direction of travel for those newly qualified to then be prescribers, I think is well overdue. And that's direction that needs to go into. And I very passionately believe that. So a really exciting role at the moment because of the exciting time that it is within pharmacy. So yeah, it's a lot of work. There's a lot that needs to happen in order to try and make those changes and kind of accommodate those new reforms. But it's a very exciting challenge for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm with you because I'm with the postgraduate team at King's. I'm temporarily with the MPharm group because I am a student on IP at King's, which most of my listeners do know already. So at the moment, I'm temporarily with the first years, who I love. Great cohort to kind of, start their undergraduate training with my encouraging face on the other side of teaching. But going back to kind of the postgrad team in January will be really exciting because we'll be obviously working towards developing the MPharm program and building in the IP course. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. And yes, you're right. There is a lot of controversy and quite a bit of negativity around the topic. And I get it. I really do.
Yeah.
I am the older generation, and I'm not even that old, of pharmacists who's come from the very traditional background of, you complete your pre-reg year, you go into, as a hospital pharmacist, you go into your foundational year, you go into a band 7 specialist job, you get your grounding in that area, and then you decide. So you could be 6-7 years qualified before you even think about applying for the IP course. Things have changed now. Obviously, a lot of the band 6 pharmacists finish their diploma after 3 years and go straight into IP, and now we're taking it to the next stage of getting pharmacists up and running as they graduate. I do think it's completely doable. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of energy that needs to be put into making sure there's safety involved with, students coming out of university and prescribing. Like that, saying that out loud instills some fear in me. But you are totally right in your perception of newly qualified pharmacists being underestimated because the amount of knowledge they have of the BNFC. I mean, I'm a pediatric pharmacist, so I've moved away from the BNF. I'm solely on the BNFC, and now I'm in palliative care, which is really small niche of patients and drugs. So in terms of like my knowledge of general adults, what's happening in terms of new NICE guidelines and what's happening with heart disease and all the standard things that we would deal with on a day-to-day in university life or as a junior newly qualified pharmacist, I'm not exposed to that anymore. So those pharmacists and those newly qualified pharmacists coming out of university are surely going to be teaching me. So from that perspective, we might have experience, we might have skills, we've got endless amounts of knowledge, but you are completely right that we underestimate the ability that those trainee pharmacists have and what they can become. And if they get the right training and they have the right attitude and they show that enthusiasm and passion for pharmacy and they have patient safety at the forefront of their minds, we've got a winner. We've got a winner.
Exactly. And like you said, I completely understand the reservations, and I completely understand sort of it is the negativity that people have towards it. And I guess it's about, like you said, however these reforms are implemented and however this direction of travel goes into, at the heart of it, as the heart of anything that we do as a pharmacist, is making sure there is that patient and public safety. And it's crucial that that is the element which, is always kept to the forefront of anything that is happening. And so, yeah, I do appreciate again, in many ways, the backlash to the reforms, but I do also see the other side of it as well. And actually, the opportunities that that could provide and the accessibility it could provide to patients and the public. If
So
you imagine a world where you have sort of within community pharmacy you have so many prescribers, and then the burden that will take off the GP practices, for example, a patient being able to go into a pharmacy and talk to a prescriber, have that face-to-face interaction. And of course, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like right now. We don't know the nitty-gritty details, but I think there's so much potential and so much excitement that could come from it. And yeah, so long as, patient safety is definitely the heart of it all, it's something truly amazing that I think will soon flourish.
And as difficult as this transition is going to be, I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I know you feel it too. I can sense it. It's going to be really fun.
I think pharmacy education right now is a really exciting time because of all these new reforms. It's one branch of it, it's really scary and really terrifying, but on the other stance, it's really really exciting, and I'm excited to see sort of how it all plays out, how it all pans out, and hopefully by 2026 we'll see what it actually looks like.
Yeah. Let me ask you, actually. I normally do my three favorite questions at the end, but I'm not going to do it to you today. I'm not going to make you wing it. I've asked you some hard questions already. With education and training, obviously you've been in it for how many years now? 3, 4?
About 4, I would
4?
say. Yeah.
Where do you see yourself going in the future? And I'm not trying to get you to think about leaving your employer or anything,
Yeah.
but what kind of, you obviously love the pre-reg director or trainee pharmacist director role and being part of the next generation and having that impact on the next generation of pharmacists. But can you see where you may go ahead of that?
I think pharmacy education is definitely where my passion lies. And I think for me, and it's probably easy to say this right now, let's see in 5 years' time what I'm saying then. But I think for me, so long as I'm within those sort of realms of pharmacy education, supporting trainee, whether that be trainee pharmacists, newly qualified, MPharm students, early careers pharmacists, supporting that sort of space of pharmacists, I think that's where I want to be. Like this particular role, for example, was a very new role that just got created this year. And so who knows, and in the future, there may be more new roles that will be created because of all of these changes that are happening. And I'd like to just, I guess I'd like to be part of that journey. I like to
Yeah.
be, say in 2026, to look back and be like, okay, I helped contribute towards this. And I think that for me is something, yeah, that's kind of the journey and the pathway that I would like to go on and remain in.
I love that.
Or I might win the lottery and then, my answer will be completely different. But
You might not be living in the UK. You might
much,
fly off to the
yeah,
Bahamas and live in a
exactly.
nice beach hut. That would be nice.
One can dream. But if
Agreed.
that doesn't happen, then I think, pharmacy education is the place for me to be.
But you could always win the lottery and move to Bahamas, but still do your job because virtual way is the way forward.
I do like the way you think. So long as I've got
Yeah.
a good internet connection, it's sorted.
Yeah, you're right. I also wanted to ask you about Sureena Speaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask you. I've got like 100 questions, but I'm not going to take it that far. I want to ask you why you decided to create that 5 years ago, and where that passion came from, and how it developed.
So I guess it started 5 years ago, and so it started once I'd finished my pre-reg year, and I think like many people, they find their pre-reg year, foundation training year, really overwhelming, and there's so much conflicting advice that you get during that year as well. So some will say you need to read the BNF at least 3 times. Other people say it's fine to read it 2 weeks before your exam. It's hard knowing exactly what you need to do. And I think for me, creating Sureena Speaks was almost a way in which I would have liked to revise. So kind of that sort of structure and concept. And also, as sad as this probably sounds, it is the way that I learn. I look at myself in the mirror and I talk to myself because
Okay.
for whatever reason, seeing myself talk helps then information go into my brain. And so I thought, well, if this helps me, maybe potentially it could help somebody else. And that's kind of then how it came about. And yeah, I'm very grateful that people watch it and that I'll continue to make it so long as people watch it. And yeah, that was really it.
Yeah, I mean, it's done amazing. It's been 5 years now. Your YouTube channel has been up and running, and I checked out they've got so much content on there. It's
Yeah.
really impressive. Like, you're so humble, but it's
Oh,
so impressive. You've done an amazing job. And I found your YouTube channel before I found you on LinkedIn, and I didn't click that that was you. I found Sureena Speaks and I was like, oh my goodness, a pharmacist on YouTube. And look at this, like how many videos there are, like look at this great content, how exciting, for the younger generation to see this content and like bite-sized tutorials, totally the way forward. And it's just in a nice, easy, relaxed format. It's not like a formal education process. And I mean, everybody loves YouTube. Everyone's learning off there. I mean, I kind of Google on YouTube effectively all the time, usually for DIY things. But I do use it a lot, and I suspect a lot of the younger generation of pharmacists would go on there and also utilize it. So, I came across it and I got really excited that you've spent the last, half a decade creating content for other people and helping other people to learn. So, yeah, it's really impressive. Like, you should be really proud of that.
oh, thank you. That's really, really kind of you to say. Thank you. I really appreciate comments like that because it is that thing of when you're recording it by yourself, you forget the rest of the world around you. So it's really, I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's
Yeah.
funny though that you said that with my LinkedIn, you didn't clock that it was me because I think a lot of people think my last name is actually Speaks. And so I remember one time when I was working in community pharmacy, when I was a relief pharmacist, um, obviously I had the RP log and I had my name in there. And I was working with a newly qualified pharmacist who had watched my videos, and he saw an RP log and he was like, your name isn't Speaks. What? Like, I thought that was your actual last name. And so that really made me laugh. I love the alliteration, which is why I've got
It
it.
is great. It's a really catchy little name. And no, I did think
Thank
your
you.
surname was Speaks, but that's cute. It's just I didn't click. I don't know why. It
Maybe I
just
should
didn't
change
click.
it to Speaks. I've already had to change it once being married, so I can change it again. It's fine.
Why not?
I know.
Why not? How would your husband feel about that? Let's see.
Well, I call him Mr. Speak, so
Oh, do you?
if I change my last name for him, he can change his for me. So
Nice. I love that. That's great. So everybody, yeah, check out the YouTube channel and I will put it
thank
in the
you.
show notes so everyone can have a look because it is really good content and I will definitely share that with my students at KCL as well.
Oh, that's really
Because
sweet.
why not? Because why not? Because we should advocate for each other and yeah, promote each other's work. So that's great. And I'm happy for you that you've got that on the side. You're a busy lady like me.
Yeah, I say it keeps me out of trouble. So
Nice, nice.
it's a good
Yeah, I
like
love that.
little hobby to do and keeps you not that I'm not busy as it is, but it's a nice sort of something creative to do, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to you, that the podcast really helps me to be creative and I love creativity. Um, all the editing, the music, the show notes, the Instagram page, LinkedIn, all of that. It's all creative and it's all things that I feel really comfortable and find easy to do in the evenings because I don't really want to do real work in the evenings, not really, because I'm quite tired. But this kind of creative content, I mean, here we are recording in the evening, like it's a perfect way to enjoy a conversation with someone that I don't know, and then having to edit the video, edit the sound, for the podcast. It's fun, like it's really really good, and I found a new passion, by chance, which is great. So you share that with me, which is amazing.
I
And
must say though, the editing side of it is not my favorite. It's
oh, do
just
you not like it? I
yeah.
love it.
So I like the actual creation of the videos and sort of all the lead up to it, but the actual editing, it's probably because admittedly I'm just not very good at it, and so it just takes. Sometimes I think people underestimate how much time it can take to
It's
edit
time
something as
consuming.
well. Sometimes even for like a 10-minute video, because I'm start stopping, I might have like 30 minutes which I need to whittle down, and
Okay.
editing that just takes forever. So
Yeah.
that's
And actually, do you know what? In those 5 years, I bet you've learnt so much about public speaking. Like it's given you the hours and hours and hours of practice of speaking to yourself, but yeah, of public speaking, which is going to help your students. Again, it's another skill. Everything in life is transferable, and I'm going to end it there because that is true. Thanks so much for coming on to the podcast tonight, and this is going to be an amazing episode. We talked a lot about, our passion for the next generation and, how we're kind of impacting that. And I'm really passionate about that. I do love it. And I hope that the students feel inspired by this episode.
Thank you so much, Anne, for the opportunity. And it's things like this, like going back to what we were saying about the whole, virtual world. We wouldn't be able to do this if, in like we could do it in a face-to-face setting,
Yeah.
but obviously it's a lot easier in a virtual setting. And so, thank you. And it's been amazing to meet you as well.
Yeah, definitely. Love it.